Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. We all know that Muslims fast in Ramadan, but what about other faith traditions? Do they practice fasting as well? And how does fasting look for them? Joining me is Dr. Shabir Ally from the Islamic Information Center, now from his living room. Dr. Shabir Ally, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
It's my pleasure to be on.
So let's talk about the different fasting practices. We all know about Ramadan, but maybe people don't really know about the other traditions that are out there. So it seems like many religions practice fasting.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you framed it that way, Safiyyah, because when I did some research for this, I found that there are many articles, like in British newspapers and so on, they would introduce it the same way, that it's known that Muslims are going to be fasting in Ramadan, but what about other faith traditions? Fasting, they would then add, is known across many religions. But it is true that the idea of fasting is known from Muslims as a kind of universal practice among Muslims, and with a great degree of prominence. I couldn't find another of the world's religions having such a prolonged period of fasting, and that is practiced by the followers around the globe, as we find in the religion of Islam. So just so that we put this, in the right framework, so that even non-Muslims can follow what we're saying. Muslims are required during the month of Ramadan, which is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar, to fast from morning till evening for 30 days in a row. So that's a very regimented fast. And while fasting is known across the world's religions and recognized as something that is beneficial and spiritually advancing, nonetheless, the rigors of the fast are not so well prominent in the other faiths.
And I guess in Islam, fasting is considered obligatory, right? Compared to
yes.
maybe other fasting practices that are voluntary.
Yes, so the classical Islamic tradition interprets the Quran on this question to mean that able-bodied Muslims are required to fast. It's obligatory, you're right. And those who are ill or on a journey can fast an equal number of other days. Those who do not expect to recover from illness, or those who are too old and feeble to fast, would pay a meal for one person for each day of the fast as a sort of compensation. It's called fidya in Arabic, in lieu of the fast. So too, women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, and they fear that the fasting may be detrimental either to their pregnancy or to their infant child.
Mm-hmm. So tell me about other faith traditions and what sort of fasting practices they have.
Yeah, so the one that is most widely known is the Christian practice, mostly so among Catholics and Anglicans, the practice of fasting during the Lenten season. This is a 40-day period prior to the occasion of Good Friday, when it is said that Jesus, on whom be peace, was crucified. So during those times, some Catholic traditions have it that you wouldn't eat meat on Fridays. So that would be the form of fasting. Some other traditions and interpretations would have variations on this. So basically the idea is to deprive yourself of some things that you normally would enjoy, and you're going through this period of self-deprivation for the pleasure of God.
Mm-hmm. I've heard some people saying they're fasting from social media for Lent, so maybe this is what you're talking about, the depriving oneself of things that you enjoy.
Yes, and some of the Protestant traditions, they may not have the same stipulations about like staying away from meat on Fridays, but they might pick one thing that they normally would like to do, and then they're fasting from that thing. They're abstaining. So fasting, actually, in the Islamic tradition, siyam in Arabic really means abstention. So in reference to the fasting of Ramadan, we take it more generally to mean abstention from food and drink, but it could be more like, if we take the literal meaning of the term, it could be abstaining from something that normally you would have done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So you've mentioned Protestants and Catholics. What other religious traditions are there that practice fasting?
Well, in Judaism, the most well-known fast is on the day of Yom Kippur. Of course, when we think of Yom Kippur, we don't think of the day of fast in Judaism. That's a day of forgiveness, of kafara, as we say in Arabic, of getting one's sins obliterated. But our Jewish friends would, on that occasion, fast, and this is an obligatory fast for them according to the Old Testament. And that fast would be for the entire 24-hour period, and is adding some cushioning to be sure that it is done right. It normally amounts to about a 25-hour fast.
And does it involve water? What sort of things can a Jew eat or not eat?
Well, like us, our Jewish friends would, during this fast, abstain from food and water. Okay, so that's a bit of a similar fast to the Muslim fast then. Yes, of course, with the difference, as you know, that in the Muslim fast, we're allowed to eat at night, and the fast extends from dawn till sunset.
What about Buddhists and Hindus?
So among these traditions, Safiyyah, the tradition is not uniform. And if I could backtrack a little bit, I would have added that in Judaism, in Rabbinic Judaism, 6 other days in the year are recommended for fasting as well. Okay. But let me get to your question about Buddhism, and then I'll go on to Hinduism as well. So in Buddhism, the fasting is not uniform, and we find in different branches of Buddhism or in different interpretations, there will be different stipulations. One of the most well-known practices in Buddhism that relates to fasting is that the monks who are following the Vinaya tradition, they would have a midday meal or close to midday, and then after that they would not eat anything for the rest of the day. So, but that of course is the practice of monks who might be expected to practice a greater degree of asceticism than the common folks. But common folk as well would be it would be recommended for them to fast like on a full moon day, which would be obviously once per month. But some interpretations have it that the faithful would fast also once per week, and that would involve a fast from noon till the next morning.
Tell me about Hinduism then.
Hinduism also has varied traditions regarding fasting. They would fast like on a new moon day, and they would also some would fast on special festival days, such as Shivarati or Saraswati Puja. So if there's a festival that is relevant to a particular Hindu, depending on the tradition that they're following, the particular deva that they're devoted to, and so on, then they would be fasting on those particular days.
Dr. Shabir, I mean, we can talk about other religious traditions as well. I know that Mormons also fast on particular days.
Yes.
What do you think is the reason behind fasting in all of these religious traditions?
Yeah, in all of these religious traditions, Safiyyah, it looks like fasting is recognized as a way of making spiritual progress. See, when we're indulging our appetites in eating, drinking, and so on, and in the Islamic tradition, there is also, to be clear, the mention of intimacy. So this, when we're indulging our, what we call basically our animal desires, what we share with other animals, the desire to eat and drink and procreate, then we forget the spiritual side. And we know that sometimes when a person loses one ability, another ability becomes enhanced. So let's say somebody loses their sight. We ask for God's protection. But then we see that that person may develop a keener sense of touch or of hearing, because the deprivation of one would sometimes lead to the enhancement of the other. So in fasting, because we're depriving ourselves for that limited period of these animal desires, we reawaken the spirit. and we get the spirit more attuned to its relationship with our Creator, so that we recognize that we belong to our Creator and we have a closer relationship with our Creator during the fasting period.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Shabir. Lots more we could discuss, but we have to end there. I appreciate your thoughts. Thank you.
You're welcome.